Well, welcome to a new Harry's Garage video, and as you can tell, this one's going to be a little bit different because in a moment Frank Stephenson is arriving. Now, he is a car designer who might well know some of the cars he's done. He's infamous in the industry. I've known him for around 20 years, and his CV includes cars like the BMW X5 and the new Mini when he was at BMW. He then moved over to Ferrari Maserati to be director. Luca Monzemolo got him in, and Ferrari F40 was one of his, the Maserati MC12. I thought he did Ferrari 599, but it's not on his CV I saw on Wikipedia, so I'm going to ask him about that one. He then did new Fiat 500. He went over to Fiat to head up their creative design office, and then moved to McLaren. And was there around for the launch of the 12C and also the McLaren P1, as many others McLarens as well. Now, he's coming in the garage, and I'm really quite excited about this one because we're going to just talk about car design today, where it's heading, electrification, what's that going to do, and just the way we seem to have this Russian doll sort of syndrome that I just don't understand, the Chinese effect on design, and I'm thinking of the BMW 4 Series and that sort of thing. But we're also going to discuss these two cars, the Ferrari F40 and my Countach, and just decide which is which. I'm going to be in the Countach corner, and Frank, one of his hero cars is this Ferrari F40. It's going to be great fun. We borrowed this from the hairpin company, so I'm very grateful to have this here. He's arriving in a moment, and I think this is going to be quite a lot of fun. Well, fantastic you're here, Frank, and I got you an F40 as well, just to have a little poke around.
Yeah, it's a bit of eye candy, Harry. I mean, you don't really see an F40 every day, do you?
No, and you're quite keen on these, aren't you?
I'm hugely keen on the F40. I think it's probably we speak about it as being iconic. I think it's legendary. I mean, it goes much further than just being an icon. Yeah. It's a Ferrari. I mean, it's a proper Ferrari. It's in the day, it's still a bit raw, and there's not a lot of stuff done to the car to make it look beautiful. It's just and in that sense, it's a work of art because it's so purposeful.
It is extreme. That's almost the thing. I'm going to challenge you on this car from a fun point of view. Obviously, I've owned the Countach. I've had this 10 years now. This is 1987. That, I think, is 1987, this particular car. And these were sort of out. I remember this was the motor show car of London Motor Show 1987, and they said we didn't get that many people on the stands as we normally get the crowds because they brought an F40 along, and that was the star of the 1987 London Motor Show. So and they're just different cars. So I did look at getting one of these, many moons, about 2005 I looked at them. My difficulty with this car, I always think, it is wild. I cannot criticise it in any sort of way, but basically it's a race car, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's got a lot of racing pedigree in the design. But as you said, they're both from the same era. I mean, 87, this came out in 87, that's in 87. That this one was the star of the show, I don't really, I get it because, Ferrari has that kind of cachet to it. Yeah. But at the same time, I think that in their own right, both cars merit that kind of position in history and car design. They're totally opposites, which is interesting because they're both Italian. Yeah. And you recognize both they're not confusing for any other car brand. They're Italian, and as Italian as it gets. Super extreme and super racy also at the same time. But one for me is Versace, and the other one maybe is a little bit more, I don't know, Armani or something. It's a little bit tighter, like in a suit.
The thing about Countach is it was around for an awful long time. So this was actually designed in 1970, 71. Gandini was actually sitting down and penning it. Yeah. And it came out production form 74. So there is actually 12 years between the design of these two cars. Yeah. And yet we're still talking about them now, aren't we? We're still going, holy hell, every time you see one.
I think probably in terms of sports cars, the best representations of their age, of that era, because obviously, the 70s was when they made the big jump with the Countach, which, by the way, is interesting. You know the name Countach, where it comes from.
I do, and you speak fluent Italian, so you probably know
its but it's a little bit harder than that. It's Piemontese, which is a dialect, the Turin dialect, but it kind of, Countach, said properly, obviously, is the same word as damn in English. Right. So when the engineers saw it, obviously, they said, pretty cool stuff.
I say Countach with a U, Countach. Yeah. You said it differently then.
Well, I put a at the end of it. So it's Piemontese, so it's not proper Italian. It is Italian.
How do you say Countach?
I say Countach.
To Countach.
Yeah, it's
end.
a little bit.
And you think the Italian? That's what Italian.
That's how the guys who worked on it were always
right. Oh well, it's Countach
it
from now on then. Well, you learn something.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's also Bertone versus Pininfarina.
Yes. Yeah.
And I always thought Bertone always a bit more edgy somehow. Pininfarina is a finer.
Yeah,
line.
they had more fluidity in their design language. But I think Gandini and the guys who worked on this project. Basically, it was almost an exercise in looking for a new language, a new design language.
Yeah.
I kind of think it's, for me, I like the design. It's that wedge look, and it's crisp and hard, and you know, there's not a lot of transitions of one shape to another shape. It's basically just a hard wedge, pretty much.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, you could almost think you could design the car by folding paper. You know, it's kind of like origami design, where you start to fold paper and you get hard edges. But I tell you one thing, Harry, if I had to wash both of these cars, I'd have more fun washing the F40 than I would the Countach. I'd come out with a few slits probably. Well, it's industrial design. It's more, I mean, it's almost going away from that beauty, that purity we had of all the cars in the 60s. It was, you know, this is not Sophia Loren. That is tending towards Sophia Loren. This is more brutal, more hard-edged, and it's almost trying to make a
Grace
statement.
Jones, should we say?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely more aggressive, and it's got a shock value to it, immediate shock value. This thing, we look at it today, and we're still shocked and shock and awe. But you imagine back in the day when somebody saw this after just having seen the Miura come out.
Yeah.
This was kind of probably for them in that age, thinking, is this really a Lamborghini? And of course, we've settled into it. It's become known as Lamborghini's new design language. This is still current today in terms of how Lamborghini treat their design language. But everything evolves, obviously. The F40 is probably not recognizable today to somebody who's looking at it for the first time as a child or something, probably not today's language, but the Countach has held its ground, I think, in terms of design for a long, long time. The
bit I can never get over is when I actually see the size of it, the length. It's way smaller than you imagine it.
Yeah.
The size of today's Ford Fiesta or actually a 911 is pretty, a 2.7 RS, I was out with one the other day with this, basically the same size.
Yeah, but you look at a Fiesta and one glance and you've seen the car. This car here, in that small, footprint that it has, there's a lot going on that keeps your attention glued. You're always finding something new on a car like this. It's almost like 10 chapters. It's not a short story, but
well, the one I always love is this line here. See, that is not a straight. You think it's a line, but it flows up and down. It flows over the top arch, down the door, comes back up.
It does.
Absolutely love that line.
It is. But one of the things I kind of miss, if I had, but it wouldn't suit the car. If I would have looked at this car, my first impression was it doesn't have that typical Coke bottle silhouette that a lot of cars do have, just to accent the, like the wheels are pushing out sideways out off the on the track. So it's very straight along the side.
Yes.
From the top view, it's very straight. You look at it from the side, and you got that nice combination of a curve with a wedge. I mean, there's hardly any curvature from the front up to the top of the windscreen. It's almost, ruler. Straight edge straight, so it's very linear in that sense. Very flat. I mean, typically you look at the Ferrari roof line, you see a lot of curvature. Here, it's almost as flat as you can make a surface.
This is as flat as you get,
yeah.
Another one, as an owner, is the view I love. I can't stand them with the wing now because you miss the design. Gandini's brilliant. If you look down, there's this sort of arrowhead, this sort of the way it does this, and you miss it all if you put the wing on it.
Oh yeah, it's kind of like covering up the parts that like they do on modern motorcycles. They cover up the best parts.
Yeah,
you kind of want to see the engine in here. If you could actually look through it and see
that's the one.
Lexan polycarbonate.
If we move over to the F40, that's the bit that really gets me.
Absolutely. I mean, that was probably, they didn't think of it in that day. It was probably complicated to figure out how to do it, but they did do it with the F40 a decade later almost.
Yeah. Let's go and have a look at it.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm deeply jealous of this because it's got such mechanicals to show off, and this was just brilliant.
It was a great solution. You got to get heat. I mean, that's a lot of horsepower. a lot of engine heat that gets built up there. So Ferrari came up with this brilliant concept of getting the air out. And we call it heat soak because obviously you're at a stoplight or in some position where you're idling away and the heat still has to get out of it. So it can just come straight out, evacuate it that way. But at speed, it also flows directly out. I think, yeah, that's really, I wouldn't say they missed a trick with the Countach, but I think this really, really sets the F40 off.
I'm trying to think, was this the first time we'd ever seen this? You had early Ferrari Testarossa and they had the carburetors, didn't they? The trumpets.
Yeah, it's not the first time they exposed engines. I mean, properly exposed it, probably not, but the way they've actually treated it here, where it actually looks like, you know, an element that they really want to show to the viewer, because this is let's face it, it's the heart and soul of the car, isn't it? It's the twin turbochargers, it's Ferrari everywhere. Magnesium bits and pieces. You want to see the mechanical parts of this car. It's really what it's all about.
Yeah, and the dump valve as well. You know,
it's all on show. It's art on wheels in that sense.
Yeah.
And regretfully, these Lexan covers here came out of the factory very clear like this, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But with a bit of use, it's kind of like when your pipes turn blue, gold, purple. These would turn a little bit hazy-ish, yellow hazy-ish, which look good. I love the look of that. I mean, obviously it's wear and tear, but it gives it that really, you know, that used look that this thing has been pushing the limits.
Yeah. No, and then, because this is 1987, so then they started using, was it Ferrari 360 was the first to use a glass engine cover?
Yeah, 360 had it, and then, where it was a bit flatter. It wasn't, you know, kind of raised up like this. It was a bit lower on the back. So
when you were designing F430, was you're just going to do this? Did you try and enlarge it? Did you dress the engine?
We had to put a lot more effort into designing the bits and pieces of the engine that you would actually see through there.
Right.
Because that was, you don't need to make it in plexiglass or polycarbonate or Lexan, whatever. But because you're going to put things on show, then you have to be sure that the elements, here it didn't really matter. It's a racing engine, it's beautiful as it is. But as we got through different eras of design, detail became much more important, and things like that became even more critical, even to the point where exhaust pipe finishers were important. Every little piece of the design becomes an element, and you try not to overcook it or overdo it, but still everything is on display. So yeah, with the 430, the engine bay treatment was a lot more effort gone into it, I would say.
Was there ever any conversation on doing it on a Ferrari 599? The sort of engine on show?
Well, I mean, you're right there, Harry. One of my dreams is to get a car out that has the front engine, or the front mid-engine, as the 591 was, on display. So why not do the same thing in the front of the car?
But you didn't, it wasn't a chance to do it then? It never got discussed, that's all I was wondering.
It's the 599 probably isn't as sporty as that kind of car.
Right.
Would be that you would do it too.
Oh, right. You'd want, if the 599 GTO or something, you'd want.
Yeah, if you get into a performance version where you maybe, you know, you're changing the design of the bonnet and you're increasing the NACA duct, as we call it, the intakes on the front, then you could probably do it. But as a normal series vehicle, it probably would have been too aggressive. Yeah. It would have been on steroids that way. We've got to watch it in that segment.
Yeah.
But what's interesting also, I think, Harry, about the two cars, as you mentioned earlier, the footprint of these two cars is actually a lot smaller than people normally would expect it to be. When they see it live for the first time, it really comes across as very compact. Yeah. Yet, it's the proportions which make this car, because although it's, you know, it's not as low as the Countach, it's a little bit higher, this one here. But what really makes the size impression of this car is the rear end, the width of it on that small footprint that it does have. Yeah. This is almost 2 meters.
It has a presence, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's 2 meters wide in the back. It's rare to see a car that has that width to the back end. And
I always loved this.
Yeah, the mesh.
Just stunning. I remember following a F50 around Spa, and I just wanted to carry on following to the petrol run out.
Would you not, Harry, have preferred this car not to have any mesh at all in the back? Imagine that.
Yeah.
I mean,
why do you have the mesh? Yeah.
There's no reason for mesh. I'll tell you what the reason for mesh is.
Yeah.
Why? And I've always tried to fight any car that's had, you know, a design I've worked on where we've had mesh in the back. I've tried to kill it simply because you're blocking hot air. The reason for the mesh is to get hot air out. So every little filament of that mesh is blocking air, and you can gain a lot more square centimeters if you eliminate the mesh. The only problem is marketing says, well, what if somebody comes along, sticks their hand in there and burns their hand on the exhaust pipe or something. But those are precisely the kind of people we have to eliminate from the gene pool, because I would never put my hand inside an area like that to try to touch something. So meshes, I hate meshes.
And you made a point of that on the McLaren, the P1, wasn't it? Because that was all open, as I
same
remember
way.
that.
Yeah, I really fought to the end, try to get the marketing guys to not force us to put mesh on, but obviously it's compromising.
Yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail on the design of the F40, because you're going to do a separate film on this for your channel, Frank Stephenson, which you've got to watch, I must say. It's a fantastic detail in there, particularly the one in the BMW 4 Series I really enjoyed. But
polemic.
From your side, you're very diplomatic, I thought, on that one. Yeah, very good.
Sometimes.
But I would say it's weird. It's a bit OTT, isn't it? Or was it allowed?
No, it's not OTT. I mean, it's OTT in the sense that, you don't see anything like this today. But I'll tell you what OTT is for me. But they had a reason for doing it. You remember the Daytona Charger? The Super B.
Oh, that was crazy.
That was probably
that
about
was up there,
here.
Yeah.
But the only reason it was up that high was not for aerodynamics.
No.
It was because the tailgate had to open.
Oh, no. Is that all it was?
So they had to keep raising it. And finally, they got the height right, but it was only to be able to open the tailgate on it.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought it was just clean air.
It is clean air. It's kind of like an old Can-Am style car that had the wings way up and things. But it is dramatic. I think they've done it really nicely here. There's no reason for the height to be any higher than where it's at. It works perfectly. It's an amazing piece of design. I mean, it just comes straight out of the body side.
Yeah, no,
and this car,
it's amazing.
As opposed to the Countach, which is very straight down on the sides.
Yeah.
This has got that sexy Italianist hips, that Coke bottle sweep to it. It's an interesting way to look at the design, because the fenders are just pulled straight out, and they don't even meet the body sides, which is kind of interesting because it allows the hot air
vent
out.
here. Yeah, that's really clever.
That's F40. You look at that, and you just need one little hint of a photograph, and you know it's an F40 when you see that.
Now, I'm playing devil's advocate as a Countach owner. That's a bit boring, isn't it? Just a door like that. I mean, why can't they have an uplift door and a bit of pizzazz about it?
But there's something about doing this with a window that I love.
And you don't even get a door handle on the inside. You get that cord, don't you?
That's focus. That's like, how much lightweight can we build into the car? So there's no frivolities on this car at all.
Is it? Oh, I just noticed that is actually a point. You've got the same door latch as a Countach. That's the same anchor point.
And if you look at where the door latch is, height-wise,
it's actually the same as a Countach.
Right down there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. A lot of people, when they close the door of the F40, they push it in the wrong spot. You need to push it on the bottom half of the door to get it to close properly. So.
Oh, well, there's a special way to open and close a Countach door.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that's identical.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, what other car out there that is in this price bracket where you pay more for less?
Yeah. Well, I can't get over how stripped out it is, because my issue with the F40 again is, if I say to my wife, "So, come on, let's go out tonight. Let's take the F40," I'll just get a slap. If I say I'll do that in the Countach, she'll all right then, noisy thing. But she would tolerate that. Well, this is just. Well, this is a bloke's car, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only special thing you can get with this car is air conditioning, which it really needs. But there's no radio in here. This is more about the fun driving there. It's not about where you're going to, not your destination, as they say.
No.
So in that sense, if you're going to look for that visceral, we call it oftentimes, visceral experience, I mean, this car does it for me. It just...
I want to check that door. I'm sure that is the same latch on here. We're not making your life very easy by having no light, but it's the same catch.
Is it the same one? Same supplier?
Oh, no, I think it is. It's covered up there. But anyway, it's the same thing. There we are. But there is a little bit more luxury going on in there. I've got my CD changer and my radio, and I've got my air conditioning, the standard, etc. Speakers, loads of speakers, lots of speakers sort of laid in there. But very different, but a bit crude.
Seat massage?
Do you know that I missed that one off there? Yeah, it's not on there. It's obviously not a car. Still wind up windows though.
It looks more cozy, more comfortable, absolutely. First impression is you're getting more for your money on this interior.
I think you can be a bit bigger if you're an F40 owner. I think there's a size limit on the Countach.
Yeah, I mean, look at the roof, how low it is compared to the F40. It's when you put the two together that you start seeing the differences in the proportions of the car.
But that's how you close a Countach door. You have to
push on that.
If you try and close it on the top with the temptation here, this is soft aluminium, and you make it look pebble dash. So you do it on that bit.
But again, here you see the commonality that these two cars are the way they took air in. This is very professional, isn't it?
Yeah.
You look at the intake,
the knacker ducts. Yeah.
And a lot of people think, well, that's just an interesting shape, but there's actually a scientific reason for maximizing the amount of air going into an opening.
And it's the lack of drag, isn't it, as well, I think, from that, isn't it?
Yeah, it causes a bit of a pressure change too, and it pulls the air in very well.
The other lovely thing, I think, on the Countach, which isn't on the F40, is they painted them black. I hate Countach in black because you miss all the details of where all the black is on the intakes, etc.
I mean, I would only have a car in black if I didn't like the design of it, because black will actually make the design look a little bit smaller, more compact, and it hides all that really nice sensual definition we tried to get into the surfaces. But black is, it's one of those colors that, for me, if you're not proud of the car, then you just basically make it black.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah. But one of the other cool things I think of this era, which we don't see anymore, regretfully we don't see anymore, are the pop-up headlights.
Yeah.
And I always loved that because it gave such a nice finish to I mean, they have their normal headlights, but then the pop-up ones are very special. Yeah,
it just gives them eyes. I think, it's just as good looking with the lights up or down. But, just give how they finished them. I'll show you the Elan in a minute, because that's very sculptural as well, how they did the flip-up lights. Beautifully done. The other reason why you should buy a Countach and not an F40 is I can go over speed bumps and things like that.
I think you can get a lift system with these.
Right.
This is a good option. I think anybody who has one of these wants to get the lift.
Yeah, and I've got a proper boots as well, and you've got some silly boot at the front that gets stuff wet in there and things like that.
Yeah,
I've got a spare wheel. Yeah.
You're thinking negatively, Harry. I think you've got to think positive.
It's called grabbing at straws, really, of arguing against the F40.
Yeah. No, definitely have to travel light when you're going with an F40.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to your video because you'll tell me much more secrets on the F40.
Yeah, this car is full of them. I mean, it's for me, it's still amazing to see it. I just love seeing that little bit of waviness to the surface, because obviously the carbon fibers.
That's it.
Is one of the secrets you can notice in something like this. But
which is on the Countach engine lid as well, actually. You can see the weave on that as well.
Yeah.
But I'm going to move away from these because I'd love to talk about other things, bigger picture design issues, even though these are great fun to talk about.
Yeah.
One of them, I just want to go back to the 70s this time and just look at the crazy thing with the Countach and the Espadas. You know this is a Lamborghini, even though they share nothing really on the design. There's some wildness, isn't there? There's something else beyond the fact that it's got the same grille or something.
Yeah, you couldn't. You're absolutely right. You nailed it there, Harry. They're both Lamborghinis, and you know it right away. But for me, it's a little bit obvious why it's a Lamborghini, especially what makes the two of them connect.
Yeah.
You don't get cars typically from this era with a lot of flat surfacing, and this is about as flat as a pancake. From a designer point of view, it's about as flat as a pancake.
Yeah.
Whereas also on the Countach, you have that very planar design language, and the one thing that really sets off these cars, the Lamborghinis, from other cars, I think, is the amount of, in design we call it tumble home. So I've talked about it before, but it's that lean in of the glass.
This angle here, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's pretty extreme on a Lamborghini. And the only way you can really do that comfortably is by bringing the waistline out. So you're going to have, to begin with, a very, very wide car. So if you look at this car as a GT car, it's wide, it's low, it's wide, very flat. And I think if you look at certain elements, I mean, if you know the Mura, you'll know that this section here, right through the middle, is very Mura-like. They've only embellished it with this fitting here, finisher in there, give it a little bit more luxury maybe. But the Lamborghini-ness stands out with the kind of intakes they're still using for...
Well, knacker ducts, and also painted. Nobody else does this. They have to have black.
Yeah, it sets it off really well, so it gives it a bit more... Yeah, it was typical in the day to paint things black to make it look a bit sportier, I guess you could say. But it's definitely a Lamborghini, and from that era, the round headlights were a big thing. Everybody was doing it. Lamborghini did it in a very simple way.
I also love the way there is just no surround banding. They
Yeah.
just put the 4 headlights there, and just we want air, so just no point blocking it off.
Yeah, and what's interesting is you don't have a grille on the car per se. You know, every manufacturer's out there trying their hardest to establish a look with the grille of the car. Lamborghini said, you know, forget that. We're just going to put a basic opening in the front of the car.
Yeah. Put a badge and do the design.
Yeah, but it's maximized, which is great because that's the way to make the most intake possible. Is don't even worry about a grille.
So low and wide.
Yeah.
Black treatment means that this is a GT because there's no tumbleweed. It's bolt upright doors, etc. We're here.
Well, it's very British also. It's very proper. It's
yes, make way. We're coming through. Yeah. I can never get over how many Rolls-Royce. There is a statement. It's funny. This car looked enormous in its day, and now it looks quite dainty, doesn't it? But you know, in size and size of the glass
it is a big car. I mean, even for the day, it was a big car.
It's long. It's definitely
I mean, the first
long.
thing you notice about it is the Acropolis hanging off the front end of it. You know, it's just. Do you need a grille to be like that?
Yes.
It
is quite something. And just the amount. It's one of those cars they just built up, and they had no idea what it would weigh at the end of the day, would it?
I don't think they cared.
They just make the engine bigger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't
6 and a bit litres.
It wasn't
7.
Yeah. It wasn't weight to performance. It was just if it's heavy, let's just give it more horsepower or more power. Whatever.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So
and then well, behind you the Jaguar.
Yeah.
Coupe. This is William Lyon's car. He had a very flowing line. He loved design as well, and he always wanted to do a coupe version of the XJ, and there it is.
Yeah, I mean that today is modern because you get rid of the B pillar, and that suddenly becomes a structural issue. Yeah. Which I mean, I wouldn't say the car is the safest car to flip over, but at the same time, they had the guts to do it, and it stands out for the beauty of it. There's almost an Italianness into this car. I don't know, maybe it's French also in a certain way, but there's, I mean, Lyons and Malcolm Sayer were geniuses, both of them working together, and I think they just came out with shapes from the 50s and the 60s that were just mind-blowing for me,
I still think it's a wonderful shape.
When have you ever seen a door handle that elegant? You know?
Yeah, no, it is. Actually, I would say the Rolls-Royce is quite nice. It has a little tail.
Yeah, it's more like
a
handle than anything. But they paid a lot of attention to the details.
They certainly did.
Yeah.
But am I right in saying there was more freedom, perhaps, for being a car designer? There was less legislation, so I'm guessing.
Yeah.
It was a time to be a car. Would you?
Yeah, they were. I mean, designers. Through the era, we've become more. Not dull, but we've had to pay attention to regulations and things more, which kind of puts a restriction on how free and how daring you can be with your designs. It's a bit of a shame, but sometimes the challenge, the fun part is that challenge of trying to find the solution. It's not an obstacle, it's not a problem, it's just a challenge. And in the days, in the 60s and 50s, it didn't matter, and you could design whatever you dreamed of, you could design it. Yeah. And that's when they were a lot more sculptural. The designers were often trained in art institutes. Really? There wasn't really a design school to go to study automotive design. So they were basically just coming from the artistic profession, and they were very sensitive to that kind of surfacing and beauty, natural beauty. Yeah. And who better than the Italians? Yeah. And the cars showed it.
They're always annoyingly good at it, weren't they? But it always used to get me that it was like a label with a Pininfarina on a Ferrari. But I can remember when I first met you, I think you'd just gone to Ferrari Maserati and designed, and what was your title there? I can't remember.
Creative director. Concept director.
Concept,
Concept director of design.
I spoke to Luca Montezemolo about it, and his take on it. He says design is key to Ferrari. It's king of the Ferrari. We have the performance and we have the design. We should be doing it more in-house, was his argument, because it's our crown jewels, it's our DNA, was his reason for dropping Pininfarina, wasn't it, bringing it in-house?
Yeah, that's definitely part of the answer. The other part of the answer was that Pininfarina, I think, was getting spread a little bit too thin in that time period. In the late 90s, early 2000s, it was getting Pininfarina was gaining a lot of contracts from around the world to do it. And it wasn't that they let go. Obviously, Ferrari was the crown jewel for them to be able to say, we design Ferraris. Yeah. but the effort was starting to get sidetracked a little bit. You know, their design teams were working on a lot of different products and projects. And so what happened was I think the quality level started to slip a little bit, especially what Montezemolo told me was more worried about the interior design. And, you know, Ferraris have always been, you know, the car to have, but the quality wasn't always the best. And, you know, you had to be hopeful that your car wasn't built on Friday or Monday, I guess. But at the same time, if you got a good one, it was a great design, performance-wise and everything. But there was a slippage, and most people that know Ferrari deeply could say, yeah, that's probably the case. That was starting to worry Montezemolo a little bit.
Which was the one that did that? Because I would have thought 550 was all right, and the
no, but before the 550, perhaps. I think. I mean, there were cars in the 90s that weren't put together very well. No. I don't want to single out them because the owners might say, oh. But at the same time, I think there was a bit of slippage there, and it wasn't like he wanted to bring design totally in-house at that stage. It has become like that, but he needed somebody within the mark, within the brand, to be able to tell Pininfarina, because they were basically having to accept Pininfarina designs without anybody really critiquing
be able
the design.
To argue against, you know, from a design background.
You know, try this, do that.
Oh, okay.
And although Montezemolo, you know, likes art, likes design and all that, he doesn't have that last little bit of finesse and detail that designers are trained for. Yeah. And so he wanted somebody on his side, I guess you could say, that represented the brand.
So when you were there, we know the cars that really have your name stamped on it, you know, MC12, obviously, F430. 599?
The Super America, when I worked with Fiat,
that's 575.
Sorry, the 575 Super America, where we did the roof. That was, the 599 was working with Pininfarina, and we had the new concept on the C-pillar, which worked really well. Jason Castriota was working on that. Incredible designer, young guy that didn't even need to finish. He's one of those kind of students that, why do I need to finish my 4 years? I can just start working right now. So he started as a intern student, or
I just wanted to. He didn't do Gran Turismo, did he? That wasn't.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So that's he was stunning.
That
was absolutely stunning.
He's working now. I think he's head of Ford Concept in Detroit or in California. Not sure, but he's doing very well. He's moved on, done some other things on his own, but now he's in that position. So yeah, he's worked with Saab. I don't know if you know the concept car that they did. But yeah, so the 599 was an interesting new direction. Obviously, when we first did it, we thought the 612 was huge, because that was when I first started Scaglietti. And that is obviously the largest Ferrari I think that Ferrari's ever built. Was
and
the
that
612.
strange flanks it had, didn't it? Sort of the inner curve, a different
bit to get used to it.
Yeah.
But then the 599 came out, and from a visual point of view, the 599 was something like an American supercar, you know, huge.
Yes.
Wasn't as big, but it did have that size impression to it that most of the time you couldn't recognize a Ferrari being like that. That was just another almost further reiteration of how far can you take the Ferrari design language. They pulled back obviously from there.
F12 went smaller, didn't it?
Yeah.
They made a big noise.
They decided, okay, we're a little bit bigger than we should be at the moment. We got to get back in the gym and start working out again. So I lost my weight.
And by then you'd actually moved to Fiat, hadn't you?
It was one of the moments in my life where there's another. I mean, just going to Ferrari was incredible. It was like you can't ever even dream of being.
I can imagine
working at a company like that. You know, it's as high as it gets. It's where do you go from there? But yeah, then going from, I refer to it as going from heaven to hell, because Fiat in mid 2000s were in dire straits, and you know they needed something really quick.
Well, you told me that Montezemolo called you. He says we need to rescue Fiat. That was the basic gist of his call, wasn't it?
It was him saying, you know, it was a Friday night. I flew, not feeling very good, but he told me on Monday you're going to Fiat, and I go,
as quick as that.
So I thought I screwed up. I thought I'd done something really bad, and he was punishing me.
Yeah.
But it was Marchione that was just brought in and said, look, I know numbers. I don't know much about design or engineering or anything like that, but from the numbers, we know that we're going to be tanking in 10 months if we don't have something out there that makes some money for us. Wow. And so, so the 500 came out of that program there do
You must
something.
be pretty proud of the 500 though, the Cinquecento.
Well, yeah, I can't not be, because basically it took Fiat from the bootstraps and lifted them up. It was
It's mega.
impossible task to come out with something that could be that successful in 10 months.
Oh, it's unreal. I mean, it still is. My daughter has one, so Saturn. The only thing she's done extra to it, she's decorated the dash, so it has a dual dash. So yeah, something that you couldn't get. Yeah, it's very customized.
Yeah.
But so which would you pick as your favourite from Mini or Fiat 500? Which is the one you're most proud of? I would like to choose.
Well, I would pick a current Fiat 500, Abarth, or 595 or something like that, because it's just a blast. That car doesn't scare you. I mean, you can grab it by the neck and just throw it into corners and have a lot of fun with it. Yeah. Whereas the current Mini, I wouldn't do that with. I wouldn't trust myself or the car. But the original Mini, when it came out in the Cooper S version, or the John Cooper Works,
one, I love that.
They had the wine to it.
Yeah.
It was unique. I think they hit it on the head right away with that first Cooper S.
I just loved the way that, it was like a visor, how far away the windscreen was with you, isn't it? It was just a renovation.
Yeah.
My wife said it was the best car in the world because she felt 10 years younger every time she got in it. So that was the
Isn't that what happened with the first original Mini with people? It was like the it car.
Yeah.
No matter where in life
Didn't
you
matter.
found yourself, you were in a Mini and you were somebody.
Yeah.
And you were liked. But yeah, they both still look good today,
They're
which is
great.
surprising. So
really great.
They've kept their youth.
Yeah. There is a story about the exhaust on that original Mini. When you first showed it, 2001, no thought had gone into it, and there was a mad panic. And it was actually a beer can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Absolutely, Harry. That was the truth. What happened was on the night before the presentation, we were in a hole-in-the-wall little shop where we were making the full-size clay of the Mini. We finished on the Thursday going into the Friday around midnight, so 4 modelers and myself and a head modeler. And the car, this was October 95, and we were looking at it, and obviously 5 years before launch, it was one of the 15 proposals for the 21st Century Mini. And of course, 5 years before, you're thinking this looks pretty advanced and pretty science fiction for a new Mini.
God,
very futuristic. Yeah, it was a long development cycle, 5 years to get it on the road. And I remember around midnight, we'd finally wrapped it up. The car was looking absolutely fabulous. It looked real from, 20 feet away or so. You could say that's a real car. And so we were celebrating. The modelers got some drinks in. They started taking their shots. And around 4 a.m., they were completely wiped out. And I had to get home because I still had 6 hours before the presentation. So I had one last look around the car to make sure everything was stuck on properly and ready to go. And I froze behind the car when I realized there wasn't an exhaust pipe on the car. It had windscreen wipers, door handles, lug nuts, everything you could imagine, but it was missing an exhaust pipe. And I kind of freaked out because I'm thinking, I thought we thought of everything. So I went up to Colin, the chief modeler, and this is funny because we were in Munich, and he's drinking beer, but it wasn't German beer. And I said, Colin, look, I've forgotten about the exhaust pipe. We need to get one on really quick. And he said, well, look, it's just a car model. It's only a clay model. We don't really have to go that far. I said, no, Colin, the original Mini had this amazing exhaust pipe coming out the back of it. We have to do something to show that. And he said, well, look, they're on their backs. They can't work. They're completely out of it. And I'm not going to start making an exhaust pipe for you at 4 a.m. as he takes another swig from his Bud. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I took his Budweiser can, cut it in half, threw away the top, polished it off so you had this alloy-looking bottom half of the can, and took the bottom out. And so I had a hole in the bottom with that nice ribbed section there. We shoved it in the clay, and we started laughing our heads off because maybe we were slightly drunk, but we were just thinking, this is the most amazing looking exhaust pipe that we've ever seen. So I said, okay, let's just leave it and let's go into the show with this. And so the next day the car went through really well. It was pretty unanimous. And then Chris Bangle comes up and says, Frank, this is going to be great for your career. Congratulations, way to go. But never, ever waste a modeler's time making such a detailed exhaust pipe. So he thought the guy was on the lathe for, 6 hours with a solid tube. A lot of money for an exhaust pipe. And of course, I was too embarrassed to tell him, 4-minute job that I
A
did
beer
with a
can.
beer can. So I was
Yeah, kept it on that
silent.
one. Oh, the secret's out now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
so we're
I
going to
didn't
see a
tell
lot
them.
more.
And then a couple years later, obviously, the supplier asked me how I'd like the finisher to be, and I gave them the beer can. They replicated it, and we had from 2000 to 2006 the Mini Cooper the Mini Cooper had that worn exhaust pipe on the side that was basically a Budweiser beer can.
Yeah.
And I wasn't allowed to talk about it too much at that point.
One of the things I always think of electric cars, you had these queues with normal engine cars. We know it's a performance car because it's got 4 exhaust pipes and things.
Yeah.
Suddenly, with an electric car, we don't know what to do we? Suddenly, we've got a Tesla Model 3 that looks rubbish, like a 4-door saloon.
Yeah.
Does stupid, 0 to 100 times in quarter miles.
Yeah.
It's must be a dilemma for a designer.
Well,
How are
when
they
you're
gonna do it?
designing normal cars, it's not the most important thing probably, but when you're designing high-end cars, every sense of you needs to be touched, I think, when you're designing a supercar or hypercar, so that you fall in love with it.
Right.
If it lacks sound, that's one quality that you really like to work with on hypercars. There's an emotional attachment to a product, and the moment you start taking little things out like that, it kind of de-emotionalizes the product, and it's much harder to really, really love it, as we say, because love is 5 senses.
But we're going down this road. So from a car design point of view, what's your take on the future?
I don't like the future. From a car petrol head point of view, electrics makes it almost too easy. And already we've been entering that with a lot of the driving aids, which is safe. I mean, the whole direction of design in the world is always trying to make things safer than they are currently. So you're always in that trend of trying to make something safer for the driver. But it's nice to be able to switch it all off and be you, the person who's actually engaging the car to do what you want it to do, not the car controlling you. It's all this thing about Tesla, level 5 driving. I think that it's not going to happen anytime soon. Level 5 is still pretty far off. But just that shift that we're delicately moving into now with electric and hybrids is taking away, it's making cars more similar, I think, in a certain way.
Yes.
Now it's nothing incredible to go under 2.5 seconds from 0 to 60, for example. So it's becoming less about, that single factor that makes a difference for us as petrol heads or drivers or enthusiasts, and cars are becoming more similar in that respect, and I kind of miss that.
I'd love to know your views on it. What I think is going to happen is there's going to be a real divergence going to happen in the next few years, in that mobility will become the easiest way to explain it, white goods. There will just be cars that do a job and they're allowed into inner cities, etc. But the toys, that's why I have real confidence that these will be celebrated in years to come.
Absolutely.
And design, they might rethink, because we don't want to go any quicker. And I think
need to go any quicker.
I think every performance maker is scratching their head. How can we make cars appealing without the marketing saying just add 10% each year?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're finding this. Or,
No, absolutely. I mean, there's realistically, unless you go to a track, you're never going to reach the performance capabilities of most of the high-end supercars or hypercars, unless you're a test driver or somebody like that.
Yeah.
But I think the enjoyment now has to be brought out in other parts of the car, and that part where you're sort of disconnecting with the car is kind of painful for me to see at the moment. I agree with you. These cars are going to still have even more value in the future than they have at the moment. So. It's not like we're old school and we just don't want the future to be different than it is today. I think we have to accept that it is going to be different, yet you want to hold on to what a car really means, for an enthusiast, not for somebody who just wants to get from here to there.
Because you want new, you're a car designer, so you want to pen more design, don't you? Is anyone looking at, we hope Lotus might, if you like, to bring it down. Do you think the market can calm down, the performance car makers, or are they all just locked into 1,000 horsepower?
I think the fun part is not the horsepower part, it's very much along the weight part.
Right.
And I think anything we can develop in the future that reduces weight of components, of structure, panels, whatever, is going to make driving more fun again. It's not horsepower anymore. I think we've reached the part where you're driving dragsters on the road, kind of thing. It's just, who goes from one stoplight to the other in that kind of acceleration. But I think the challenge for us as designers to make design still as exciting as it is today, even more exciting obviously, and to maintain that brand appeal or your brand language, but find ways of designing that concentrate now on, for example, reducing the number of panels on a car. We've got so many bits and pieces on cars, less than before, but still more pieces I think on a car than we really need, and it's obviously, it's cheaper to replace parts on a car like that, but materials don't have to be as expensive as we think they are. They can, you can make things out of plastic that are a lot cheaper than other materials, and bioplastics also, for example. But I think if we can start to learn how to make cars in a different way, and headlight and taillight technology is moving on all the time. Cameras are starting to work for us instead of rear view mirrors. Wheel design still has a long way to go because wheels are basically wheels that we've had since the old kart days with spokes. And there's a lot of different ways to design a wheel. They say don't redesign the wheel, but that's an easy excuse. There are better ideas, I think, out there that we can use for wheels.
Oh, right.
Which I won't get into at the moment.
But they've still got to be round. They've got to be round, that's all.
But you can make a wheel a lot lighter than it is today, and that's only a good thing for unsprung weight, for example, mass. But there's a lot of active aero investigations going on now that mean that you don't have to put appendages all over the car.
Yes.
The shape of the body can change. It just takes plus and minus charges.
That speed tail is fascinating, isn't it? The way that moves.
It's a bit crude. If you ever look at it very closely, it's almost like with a bandsaw and just went bzzz, like that. Right. And you hope like heck that after 1,000 times it doesn't create a witness.
So it's like the Galaxy folding phone, and whether how many folds it
who's to say? I mean, maybe it doesn't happen. I don't know. I don't want to say yes or no if it's going to happen. But at the same time, active aero or body shifting, body morphing panels are interesting. I think we're going to be seeing very soon new directions in color and material, because oftentimes you'll buy a car in a safe color because it's a long-term car that you're going to have for a few years, so you don't want to be risky with the color. But who's to say we can't change the color of the car electronically, like some things do. So you can have your red car on Monday, blue car on Tuesday, yellow car on Wednesday. And legislation is important. Of course, you have to get it past legislation, but there are ways to do that too. So interior design is going to change incredibly in the next decade, I think, because of the fact that we're going electronic with so many things, and you can have that sort of VR effect inside of a car where things start floating instead of giving you sort of a 2D impression of displays. That can all be closer to you. I think voice activation is going to be a lot more present in the future, because you don't want to, I mean, a lot of us like to turn knobs and things, and it's a safe way, obviously. But you can activate things through voice, so a lot of it doesn't have to actually be manually done.
Because, well, one of the cars that sort of impressed me recently is a step change was actually Ferrari Roma. Suddenly flowing, beautiful, no aggression to it, different take from what we've seen in Ferrari SF90, etc. But its interior is very digital and iPad, and I just wondered if that was a step too far.
Yes, I'll say it without.
You think so?
I absolutely.
I just think, this
that.
is the wrong. I want that in the Honda E, but I'm not sure I actually want it in my Roma.
No. I think they've gone a step too far. I think for me that's still not safe, because you need to have feedback, and you can't beat a knob. The thing is with digital, you have to really look and see if you're putting your finger in the right spot. Whereas a button, you know if it's a button or not a button. And especially the on-off on the Roma, I think they've really. You need a button on a Ferrari.
Or the start button.
I think so.
Well, trying to predict the future is very hard.
It's. I mean, as designers, we're paid to predict the future, but I don't think it's really predicting the future. It's kind of so far out there, anyways. When you start designing a car, you're pretty much thinking 5 years ahead, more or less. And then you're thinking 3 years ahead of that before they do the facelift. So you're actually working, I don't know, 7, 8 years before that car actually comes out. And we don't know what's going to be coming along.
No.
I mean, you have to stay on top of technology and innovation and all that. Customer tastes are pretty much, you can't say what the customer is going to want in 7 years. So you almost have to force it onto them with an educated guess.
One thing it taught me when I did the bit of consultancy for Jag Land Rover is you've got to think globally. And you can get, in the UK, you can get very focused on what's happening in Parliament, Islington, and EU banning this, that, you know, electric inner city.
Yeah.
And then you get America, and then you get Italy, and then you get, you know, all sorts of different parts of the world who think in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, Far East, Argentina, are they ever going to go all electric? I don't think they're going to do that for many decades to
South
come.
America, you can forget about that.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just think petrol is definitely going to continue for a lot longer. You don't think just because government's saying 2030 and it's all going to disappear.
No, I mean, I want to feel and hear that engine. I just wish they would put more in research and money into biofuels
or synthetic fuel. Yeah, I think that's a massive one.
You know, and then you could treat the emissions the way they're you know, the world wants that to be.
Yeah.
But just to say we're going to go electric, and if you think about it, we all know that electric is not as clean as people think it is.
No.
And if we really want to make a push, then I think it provides a stopgap sort of solution, electrics, but I think hydrogen is probably the real step that we should be looking at.
Yeah.
For me, a little bit after I left McLaren, I started thinking, you know, there's got to be a better way or more efficient way. And obviously we, as enthusiasts, still want that flexibility that a car gives us. So, but the obvious push now is to try to unclutter. If you realize it only took 60 years from the beginning of the automobile to clutter up the highways in any significant way that it makes it hard to get from one place to the other. Yeah. So we have to find a solution pretty quickly to reduce that. And I think one of the trends right now, it might be veering off topic a little bit, but is we're going to go sky upwards, you know, into that new dimension.
You've done that, haven't you?
Yeah, and it's very exciting.
Cars, yeah.
I mean, if you're outside the industry, the business, you'll think, well, yeah, hopefully in my lifetime. But on the inside, we know it's coming very, very soon.
Really?
And it's going to shock a lot of people, I think. Obviously, you need public acceptance, and that might be harder with the older crowd.
Right.
But the younger crowd who are not so much into buying vehicles anymore, you know, it's more about the experience and about not worrying about resale or service or anything like that. Short hops. So city to city or city to rural.
Right. So this is a taxi. You're not going to be driving this thing.
No. These have to be incredibly safe. So they'll be flying low over towns. They'll be landing on hotel rooftops, parks where we have a small open space. And you can probably fit anywhere between 5 to 10 people in one of these, which makes it economically incredibly efficient because there's no infrastructure. You're not building roads or anything like that. Just a landing port or a takeoff port. You know, when we went from horses to cars, it took a long time for people to feel comfortable going, 50 miles an hour. Nowadays, it's nothing, but it's the same next step thing that we're doing.
So that will leave more space for us to enjoy these toys then, won't we?
I think so, I hope so. Then we can go a little bit faster on the motorways. And hopefully the limits change. But I mean, I think what we're going to be seeing in the future is also some type of, when you look at nature and you see how birds and fish can be so tightly packed in swarms and maneuver in high volume and speed, and it looks coordinated and synchronized. We still don't know how to explain that. There's no scientist that's come up with a definitive answer of how nature does that. I think it's just a sixth sense that we don't understand because it's hard to imagine that. But they work such that the inside and the outside of the group are synced at the same moment in time and in space. But if we can get that, somehow translate that to automobiles, and the cars can detect what's around them and know when to brake or when they can accelerate, we can say, suddenly cars are all going 70 miles an hour, almost bumper to bumper, you know, and in
Well,
a very efficient flow.
That's sort of the point I was making. That's my divergence. So we're going to have that sort of transport and then this sort of transport. I think the tricky bit for the legislators is how you mix the two, isn't it?
Well, yeah,
You know,
you can't have stupid cars and
have
smart cars.
a Countach coming into that thing doesn't really work.
Well, I think the way you would do that is you would split the lanes. You would have maybe 2 lanes dedicated to the smart cars.
Right, all right.
Countachs.
I'll have the 2 lanes and
Yeah,
the 1 lane,
exactly.
they can all go in the 1 lane.
Yeah.
This is what I enjoy, and I love some of the cars you've put out there. I can't wait to hear what you're going to say about the F40 as well.
Yeah.
But a fascinating insight into car design and where you're heading to the future, into the sky. Who would have thought?
The infinity and beyond.
Yeah, I didn't expect that at all. So well, thanks ever so much for dropping by the garage, having a look round.
Thanks,
hope
Harry.
you'll come down another time.
Well, I wouldn't call this a shop. It's more like a candy store, as I said when I first walked in.
Yeah.
It's
it's all good fun. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this video as well. If you have, well, keep watching, keep subscribing. More videos coming along very soon.